In the last two videos, we have tried to look upon the literary movements like Kit Kat Club, which was a part of Neoclassicism, or you can say 18th century literature. And then we have also discussed some literary movements from Romantic movement. For instance, we have Satanic school of poetry, or you can say lake poets, that fall under the category of 19th century, or you can say late 18th century English literature. If you have not watched all those literary movements, then you can simply check the link in the description below of the playlist on all the literary movements that we have covered till now. Before we move on to other literary movements that came in Romantic period, or you can say after Romantic age, or you can say in the American Romanticism, before we move on to those literary movements, I thought I should conclude these two ages, Neoclassical age and Romantic age. So this video is all about the difference between Classicism and Romanticism. Basically, there are two terms, Classicism and Neoclassicism. And the Classicism is something where we have poets like the ancient poets or the Roman poets, ancient poets like Sophocles, Euripides and Homer, or Aristotle, Plato. These are the ancient poets, and we can say the Roman poets like Horace and Virgil, etc. So these poets who are the ancient and Roman poets were included in the Classicism period, and the writers, the poets who were influenced by these Classicism writers are known as Neoclassicism, or we can say New Classicism, that we study under 18th century literature. We study a lot of writers under these Neoclassicism, New Classicism, you can say. For instance, Alexander Pope, John Dryden, Samuel Johnson, or you can say Jonathan Swift. Yes, Jonathan Swift also was a part of Neoclassicism or 18th century literature or Age of Enlightenment. There are a lot of terms that we use for 18th century literature, and Neoclassicism is one of them. So these writers, these poets were so much inspired by the classicist writers, the ancient and Roman poets. These neoclassical writers were much more influenced by French poets. It were the French poets who started imitating the classical writers. So these neoclassical poets were much more influenced by the French poets. The French poets were the first one who started imitating these ancient poets. And then when we move forward to Romantic age, we see that these romantic writers, these romantic poets, as Coleridge, William Wordsworth, were much more influenced by German poets. So it began in Germany. The romantic movement began in Germany. The neoclassical movement began in French. And in fact, a lot of you can say things in English literature are borrowed from other European countries. That, for instance, we have sonnets. Sonnets came from Italy. And then we have the complete literary theory. Yes, the complete literary theory. There are very few people, very few theorists from Britain. All were much more from other European countries like France, like Germany. We have Jacques Derrida, Roland Barthes. We have Simon de Beauvoir. All those waves in feminism that came after the second wave, third wave, fourth wave. All those theorists we have are from other European countries like German and France. And then we have English literature itself, English language itself. More than 58 to 60% words are borrowed from Latin and French language. This is the policy of English people, that they go on borrowing the things from other countries, from European countries, from Asia, or you can say African countries, and then they make those things a part of their own language, a part of their own culture. So that is why English is very rich language. It has you cannot study English language in solitude. You cannot study it in isolation. You have to study it in relation with other world literature, other European languages. That is the beauty of English, that it is a very rich language. So the same way we have neoclassical poets, neoclassical age, romantic age, which were inspired by other European countries. So whenever we are talking about classicism and neoclassicism, we are generally taking the broader term classicism. The neoclassicism is a subcategory of classicism. Both shares the same common attributes. So do not get confused in classicism and neoclassicism. In classicism is itself the ancient and Roman poets. Neoclassical age is something which started imitating these classical writers. So in this video we are going to look at the difference between classicism and romanticism, and we are also going to discuss a lot of important points that are important from UGC NET perspective. Before we continue our discussion, if you are one of those students who are preparing for UGC NET English literature or GATE examination, then you can simply check out our study material on both paper 1 and paper 2 from our official website limitlessliterature.com. You can check the link in the description below to know more about our study material. Now, without any further delay, let's continue our discussion on both classicism and romanticism. To understand these terms in a better way, let's look at a picture of the two gardens. The first garden you see is so much organized. It has used the boundaries and gravels, and in a systematic order the grass and the flowers are organized. And on the other hand, we have another picture where you can see the flowers are growing from behind. Sort of creative work, you can say. Rather than having an organized frame, we have these flowers which are growing in not so organized manner, but they also look very beautiful. The same way we have classicism and romanticism. Classicism focuses on the rational faculties, they focuses on logic, they focuses on the mind, the faculties of mind, they focuses on rules, regulation, system, whereas romanticism does not care much about all these system, rules and rationality, but they are much more inclined towards creativity and imagination. We have the poets like Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift in 18th century literature, which were much more focused on how to imitate, how to become a very skillful poet, just like we have the poets in the ancient like Homer or Virgil. So these playwrights, these poets, these novelists like Jonathan Swift, or you can say Alexander Pope, were much more focused on the systematic use of language, whereas we have romantic writers like S.T. Coleridge and William Wordsworth. They didn't give damn about anyone, and they didn't give the damn about how the poetry should be written, and they kept on letting the poetry written down with the overflow of their imagination. I have seen many students or educators focusing on the fact that romantic poets were much more better than the 18th century literature, 18th century poets like Pope and Swift, but it is not so. We cannot come on to conclusion, we cannot come on to any resolution. We cannot say whether the use of logical mind is better or whether the use of creative and imagination is better. We cannot come on to the conclusion, we cannot resolute anything. This is what Jacques Derrida calls Aporia. There is a term, Aporia, which is coined by Jacques Derrida earlier when the literary theory of deconstruction came. And according to Jacques Derrida, we cannot come on to any resolution. We cannot say that white is good. We cannot say black is good. We cannot say which color is good. Because if we say that white skin is better, then black skin will become automatically inferior. The same way, we cannot say whether man is good or woman is good. Okay, so if we say that man is good, then it will become patriarchal society. We cannot come on to any resolution. Okay, so that the same way we cannot come on to resolution whether the logical mind is better, able to write the poems, or whether the creative or imaginative mind is able to write the better poetries. These 18th century poets like Pope, Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift, Samuel Johnson were much more realistic. They were trying to show the reality of the life through their satires, through using heroic couplet. On the other hand, we have romanticism. We have the romantic poets like William Wordsworth, Coleridge, were much more idealistic. They want to form a utopian society. They want everyone should be united, should live in peace and harmony. So the another difference is that 18th century writers were much more, you can say, a part of realism, and then we have 19th century romantic age, which is a part of idealism. The same way we have Mahatma Gandhi, who was a much more idealistic person, who wanted to unite the people, who wanted a free nation, a corruption free nation. He was much more idealistic person. And then we have Jawaharlal Nehru, who was much more realistic person. So and this is the difference between realism and idealism. And so I hope the things are getting clear to you know. This is the very basic difference between classicism and romanticism. Classicism used to write in heroic couplet, used satires to portray the reality, whereas we have William Wordsworth, Coleridge from Romantic period, who were much more talking about the common man, talking about the lives of common man. They are using the language of common man so that everyone can understand the poems they are writing. But it is not the same case in 18th century literature, classicism, or you can say neoclassicism. So these are the basic points that you should remember while differentiating between romanticism and classicism. And this is what all I have to share in this video. I hope you found the video worth your time. If you are new to this channel, then don't forget to subscribe the channel for more updates on English literature. That's it for this video. Thank you.